All right, we are live with Nick from Chainstack. Nick Sansegrin, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to give you a good intro here, and then you're going to give a little bit more details. So Nick is the head of enterprise sales with Chainstack.com. They are one of the leading Web3 infrastructure providers, and they are Nick is someone I would consider an Avalanche maxi. Nick is a very knowledgeable person about the space. He's an OG in Web3, and I'm thrilled to have him here to talk about Chainstack's Subnet as a service offering. So thank you, sir.
Likewise. Thank you so much, Nathan, and the Landslide team. We're big fans of yours and Avalanche all the way. And you look like you got a nice coffee or a tea. And just wanted to say really respect and appreciate what you're doing for the community. I think this is amazing. Really excited to hear some of the other speakers in the sessions, and happy to answer some Q&A and present, what Chainstack's got on the go here. A bit of a bio, I guess, for myself, going back in time. I worked many, many years as a sales professional in cybersecurity, doing really exciting things like SSL certificates, TLS, and got into a little bit of the cryptography side of things with hardware security modules, some PKI. So it bleeds over a lot into some of the new crypto stuff, as you can imagine. Did a bit of a stint in custody, so got a chance to work with a institutional custodian, deep cold storage, multi-sig wallets, competing with the Fireblocks, the BitGos of the world, and understanding how regulation can really sort of help and hamper different directions in the market. And then joined Chainstack, and lucky enough, it's an amazing infrastructure provider. Definitely sort of, we consider ourselves, I hate to say the word, but kind of the boring side, the underground layer, but really foundational to how people are building and developing in Web3. So it's been a pleasure. Landed on Nathan, what was it, a couple of months ago, learning a bit about Cosmos AVAX, what you guys are doing with the Subnet ecosystem, and obviously, kind of IBC and all that great stuff. So thrilled to be a part of the session here today.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Well, I will give you the mic and screen, and you're welcome to tell us a little bit about what you guys are offering.
Absolutely, yeah, and I love the logoing and the graphics. So Nathan did this, by the way. So
no, the GPT did it. GPT definitely. That was Midjourney.
Nice. Yeah. And by the way, GPT is interesting. So obviously, we can spend a few seconds on that. But like, not only just as a sales professional, but obviously as a developer, as a builder, as an investor, as a leader, there's so many things that you can pull from GPT, and it's actually changed the way that I operate. So I kind of, cheated a bit of the system today. I don't know if you want to call it cheating or just taking advantage of what's out there, but GPT is kind of cool. And I just saw, on another note, that there is a new crypto AI type engine that's coming out. So keep an eye on Twitter. There's some stuff coming on that side.
Yeah.
So let's get started. Yeah. So, again, super proud to be part of this. We are definitely Avalanche partners if it makes sense that way. We are an RPC provider in general. So JSON RPC, kind of the foundational access to blockchains in terms of pushing and pulling transactions, reading data, direct access to on-chain data, right? A lot of people can use what's called a public RPC, or some people use what's called a private or a kind of enterprise-grade RPC, something like Chainstack offers. So getting into the first slide, I think it's just a quick overview. So another, not as exciting logo as Nathan's GPT did, but it does the trick. So as you can see here, the idea is we are a Subnet partner. We can be your Web3 infrastructure partner, and really happy to do so. So a little bit about Chainstack, I guess, for history. So we were founded in 2017 on the basis of corporate enterprise blockchain. So we were maybe a bit ahead of our time. We were doing consortium networks like Hyperledger, Corda, and Quorum. We still do a lot of that.
Basically died and been replaced with Spruce and Evergreen Subnet. Shout out.
And what's really, what's funny, Nathan, is actually just this week, I had 3 big opportunities come through on Quorum and Hyperledger. So I don't know what's going on in the market, like either, and I was going to, kind of interestingly ask you if you guys had seen any sort of rumblings, but it seems to be that either they're not yet on the curve of the Subnet or the app chain concept, or there's this sort of competitive kind of nature coming out with these older blockchains that are out there. So I'll let you know how things go in the next few weeks. I definitely, bring up and present, by the way, why, why are you on something like a Quorum or a Hyperledger? And most people don't really have any reason to do so.
Well, it's really the marketing behind it, right? When you see the tech speaks for itself, right?
No, I totally agree. And I hate to sort of guide and coach somebody into the direction that I'd like them to go. At some point, once they're dead set, it's a lot of, I think what happens is a lot of older networks and, people that have been around for a while, very much, traditional kind of institutional stuff, oil and gas, data mining, those kinds of things, very interesting use cases. But again, to me, it's a great way to help them transition to what I think is the next evolution in the future here. So again, a bit about Chainstack. That was in 2017. 2021 was the big pivot. We actually launched Polygon's first public RPC, and that was really where we pivoted from private blockchains to sort of public blockchains. And here we are, kind of full circle in late 2023, pivoting to, I don't know how you want to define it. I call them maybe semi-private. It really depends on if you're permissioned or permissionless. What kind of lingo do you use, Nathan, when you explain what a subnet can be?
It's whatever you want. If you want the subnet to be purple, it's whatever purple is.
Yeah, I hear you. It's kind of a chameleon, I guess you'd say, if you want to use that term.
Yeah. I mean, if you need to have everyone KYC'd, like you can only do that there, right? That's what sort of Spruce is about, right? If you need a particular virtual machine, like for us, we need the CosmWasm virtual machine for Cosmos apps. We can only do that in this particular zone.
Yeah, it makes sense. And actually, a little bit of alpha. I'm working on it with a client that wants to do the first ZK Avalanche subnet. So, like, things are kind of wild in terms of development. Yeah, so you'll see a bit of that as we kind of launch in the future. But yeah, so Chainstack again, built on that foundation. We have been core infrastructure providers. Avalanche has been a partner of ours for a long time. Obviously, we are supporting many other blockchains, but I'm a maxi, as I said. I see a lot of business. I see a lot of attention, a lot of traction, amazing community situations like these kinds of things. Some of the partners that we'll list out, having a chance to work from a high level overview with all the different platforms and protocols from Near, Aurora, Phantom, Solanas. Either I'm not doing a good enough job of getting embedded in the community, or the community just isn't as strong. And I don't think there's that camaraderie. And also, I think Avalanche is doing a great job at promoting themselves publicly. They've got Emin, who's now part of the CFTC, kind of maybe hopefully take a bit more of a regulatory stance. I've been having a great time with AvaLabs' team. We've got some ex-colleagues from Chainstack at AvaLabs. So all in all, I mean, I think it's the number one place to be. There's Polygon Supernets and Edge, which is probably kind of chomping at the heels, maybe a little jealous of what's happening on the subnet side. I hate to say we support both, but when people come to us, we always have a personal recommendation. And I think based on where our UI is developed, the functionality, the documentation, the support, the kind of ecosystem interconnectivity, subnets are the place to be. But again, if you're a Polygon person, you maybe don't like to hear that, but you're choosing the wrong color from my perspective. So again, in terms of the size, we have about 75,000 developers, so it's a pretty big reach. We're global, so I think we're in 16 countries at this point. So you've got folks that speak all different languages. Myself personally on the east coast of Canada here, or kind of central Canada, and my colleagues in the US. Our headquarters is in Singapore. We've got an Eastern European influence, so all over the world, very much embracing the remote kind of digital nomad lifestyle. And I've been there a year, so I've survived, as you can say, a year in Web3. It's been fun, it's been exciting, lots of ups and downs, and obviously the market conditions kind of have an impact, but it really feels like the momentum has picked back up, at least this time of year. You can see that the charts and things are moving around. So anyways, I'm quite excited to be doing this, and really thrilled to work with a lot of great projects while we're at it. Some of the cool stuff about Chainstack is the ability to have a bunch of different global data center providers. So we'll get into that in a few seconds, but clients come to Chainstack for the flexibility, the customization, and kind of the breadth of services. And so one of the big things specifically with regards to regulation is domicile. I hear that a lot, and maybe yourself as well, Nathan. I know you guys have a regulatory background with a lot of legal expertise, but people being able to control where these validators are and being able to not have too many in one region versus another, playing around with the domicile or the non-domicile nature of this thing, staying decentralized. It's kind of interesting. So we'll kind of maybe get your take on that. And I know, last time we spoke was a few months ago. Hasn't been a ton of sort of maybe progression yet on the regulatory side. I know you had said probably about a year till we really see some stuff coming into play. But anyways, we're all at the mercy of Mr. Gensler. And I just saw people are putting out this, fire Gensler today. So we'll see how he goes in the next few days if he survives the cut. Got it. And then you can see some of the cool clients that we work with on the side. So Chainlink Oracles, Bloxroute on the trading side, 1inch, the Graph, DApp Radar, Layer Zero, Linkpool, ChartX, Unicrypt, and CoinGecko. These are just a few of the logos and some of the chains that we support down near the bottom. So lots of fun stuff at Chainstack. The next point of this gets really interesting. This is talking about our infrastructure services. So we do provide elastic RPC. So again, I'm not a developer, but I've sort of used a bit of ChatGPT and some of the kind of coaching that I can find to figure out what a JSON RPC node does. It's essentially a remote procedure call, and you're making these method calls like a get receipt to get transaction, push transaction, receive data, check wallet addresses, and maybe I'm not using the right terminology here, but there's a whole list of what they call these JSON API methods. And you can either go to a protocol provider like Avalanche or some of the others and get your own public RPC from them. Sometimes those get congested, they clog. They're free, so only so good is kind of the support there. And so clients that are looking for something more of an enterprise grade service can come to Chainstack and get their own private RPC. And we support 20 protocols, Avalanche being one of them, and Subnets, as we talk about, and the app chain segment being another. We also have dedicated nodes, so not too many vendors in the space go down the path of dedicated nodes. It's a pretty high investment from the infrastructure side, takes a lot of expertise, and obviously, these are dedicated bespoke nodes that we're spinning up for a specific client. So when it comes down to running subnets, we consider those validator nodes. And then you can also have RPC nodes that sort of, run relays for the subnet, and you can have an elastic or a dedicated infrastructure type there. So without getting too deep into it, pretty flexible stuff, lots of customizations on the hardware. We try to be as cost effective as we can, working around with different cloud providers as well. Custom app chains. So we talked about subnets. I think that's the focus here. Definitely super proud to be offering that as a service, and we're definitely leaning into that. There's a huge investment going on at Chainstack in terms of not only building the UI, building the expertise, building the consulting branches, working around with great partners like yourselves and some of the others that we'll list, and also doing a lot of things from the indexing side of things. So we just launched our subgraph indexing service a few months ago. It's just coming out of beta now. It's based on the Graph protocol. Again, we had a great opportunity there with our expertise in infrastructure to launch a subgraph based on Chainstack infra. And it will be able to index subnets in the future. So a really neat opportunity there for future expansion. And then decentralized storage, just to close off, we just launched our IPFS service last week. It's in beta. We're super proud to be able to offer that. Feels like it's a nice complementary service. Still kind of interesting to understand how that's going to play into the whole subnet ecosystem, but it is a nice service to have. So you can come to us and do a lot of other things. And again, trying to bring it back to the cool part of this whole conversation is subnets. So any questions there, Nathan, before I start flying through this?
No, sir.
Okay, wicked. Okay, so next slide, I think this is where things get interesting. Sorry, another one of these. Okay, so, the benefits, I don't want to kill anybody on this one. Branded infrastructure services, high performance solutions, easy scalable growth, effortless integration, and competitive rates. We're trying to be as democratized as possible when it comes to competition. We're not out there to gouge clients. Myself personally, I'm a pretty ethical sales guy. I believe in good business. I believe in, supporting projects with either grants and other different things that we can offer. So there's definitely a lot of flexibility there. There are, kind of bottom lines that we have to cover, but, we rarely turn down a deal based on price, and we'll try to find ways around it. Everybody's got their own budget. And so we try to work with the client where they need to be. So finally, I think we get into the UI. Great. So our product manager, Konstantin, has actually spent a lot of time on this UI. This is launching probably in the next few weeks here. And so you can see a little bit of the rest of the platform. But at the end of the day, looking at the left side, you've got different projects that you're running, different services that we have. So either nodes, our load balancing service, the Graph, IPFS, our new NFT API, and then where things get really cool is the subnet section under app chains there. So you'll see supernets. We'd usually kind of scratch that off and just go with subnets. So you click here to get started, and this is the full self-serve UI experience. And I'll kind of run through it. So you'd click to get started. You can see we have mainnets or testnets. Now, obviously, based on the experience and probably what you guys have gone through as well, Nathan, is people start on a testnet. They usually beat that up for, let's say, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, even 3 to 6 months. Actually, was funny was the recommendation from Avalanche the other day. They really do feel that it's worth taking the time to kind of design this thing, play with the tokenomics, do different kind of A and B type testing, maybe kill it, start over, and then decide in terms of how this thing is going to evolve. Once you go over to mainnet, quote unquote mainnet, then you're talking the 2000 AVAX stake, or depending on some of the partners that we have, you can drop that stake and make it a bit more accessible. But 2K AVAX is not small money, depending on who you are and where you're at in the world. So commercially at the retail level, it's probably somewhat a bit out of reach. And those, there's different protocols that are making that a little bit more affordable. But for a big institution or a big enterprise, that's just part of the game. You've got to validate the Avalanche C chain, and it starts with 5 mainnet validators. So in this case, we'll walk through what it looks like to spin up a testnet. You can see the different VMs that we have. So the virtual machines, we've got EVM, we've got AVM, and then a custom VM side. So from the custom VM side, I know that Avalanche and a lot of other folks, including yourselves, are building kind of custom VMs. I mentioned a bit earlier on, we've got a client that's working on a ZK VM, which is amazing, very cool, kind of novel, exciting, sort of to compete with a bit of the Polygon ZK side. So you can do a lot of customizations. There's a few people on the AvaLabs teams that used to work for Chainstack, now working for AvaLabs. So Usman Asim, he built his own custom VM before he left Chainstack, right? And that kind of stuff is now sort of going into production. There's a lot of cool things happening from that side of view. And I think that's one of the beauties. And like you mentioned, Nathan, from the beginning, is you can sort of call this thing what you want to call it and build it how you want to build it. So this idea of a custom VM is very cool. We can help design some of the custom VM stuff, and obviously happy to bring, whatever the client brings to us. So the other cool part of this is tokenomics. It's an angle that I hadn't really dove into too much until recently. I had two great calls with the AvaLabs team, and they've been super helpful. And that's a great part of this whole partnership is, I think, at least based on my perspective, they've been very open to conversation, very open introducing their teammates, their experts, and kind of getting on the phone with clients. So that's one of the things that I don't think you get is this idea of this intangible of, people's time, which is not free. These are expensive individuals, and they're really helpful. So, we spoke with Lucien. Lucien, I can't remember how you. He's with AvaLabs. He is kind of their tokenomics expert, right? So he spent a lot of time explaining, the breakdown and the different formulas, the calculations in terms of how to set up the right tokenomics. And so there's a lot of time that goes into just thinking about your total supply, circulating supply, what's going to get locked up for validator rewards, what native gas and utility token you're going to use. So that kind of stuff maybe sometimes overlooked, but is definitely, I think, core and fundamental to the way this operates. So we've built in a little add token button down here. And obviously it's just a quick click, but it brings you to the add token section. So you can see here, we've chosen, let's say token A, here's the symbol. In terms of the type, we can have a fixed cap or a variable cap. Here in the video, you can see I've added, and sorry, it's a bit zoomed out here. So you can see you can enter your own address, you can enter the token allocation, and then you can click add. And you'll see below here, when I did the demo, I added 100 tokens to this specific address. Once I would click add, this would add 120 tokens to that address. And so you can really customize the different distributions there. And this is something that's going to get evolved over time. We're going to have better documentation, examples, tutorials around this, because this is something you definitely want to get right. The next step of it is if you want to go, and now you can see actually once you click on the next page, so you'll see it's in Fuji testnet, or obviously it's a testnet subnet. This is called my subnet. It's an EVM, and I've set up token A, TKNA, and it's a fixed cap, and I've got these two distribution addresses. The next step is going to add a variable cap. So if I want to do different kind of tokenomics here, I can add a variable cap. I can say, in this case, it's a wallet address. I can say the threshold. I click add token, and magic, it'll be on the next page now. So you can see I have both a fixed cap token allocation and a variable cap token for token B. So, this is going to get worked on and designed a bit better, but you can get the gist of the customization, really somewhat of the ease of use through this, through the UX. Clicking next here. So here we are. Now that I've created the subnet, and I apologize for making these slides so small, you can see that I've got the create new validator. So my validator is about to be created here. I go ahead, call it validator number 1. So we're starting on the slide on the right, and then the region. So based on the regions, I think this one here is set up on AWS for the demo, but we support AWS, GCP, Virtuoso, Azure, and our own Chainstack cloud. And so you'll see a lot of investment this year in the Virtuoso side of things with a partnership there, and a lot of investment on the Chainstack cloud side, which is bespoke custom bare metal infrastructure. As you know, bare metal is not cheap. It is important to kind of help differentiate, offer a different functionality, different locations and regions. And, we're happy to obviously support AWS and the main providers. But the cool thing is there's a lot of optionality, and again, a lot of regionality, if that makes sense, where you can really control the domicile, whether you want it in the US or in Latin America or way outside of those regions. A lot of flexibility there. What you also don't see on this slide, which is a bit of the secret sauce at Chainstack, is the concept of something called hybrid hosting. So the idea of having a Chainstack hosted validator makes a ton of sense, meaning you don't have to, have an account on AWS. You can just run it through Chainstack. You pay us the fee. We take care of all of it for you. Some clients actually prefer having it run on their own infrastructure. So something called hybrid hosting, where we can do what's called an EKS integration, where the client can say, you know what, I want this node in Sao Paulo, Brazil, or in Bahrain, or in Dubai, or in Ireland. You can actually connect your own AWS infrastructure account and have us manage the validator in your account on your behalf. So it's a really cool concept. A lot of the clients that we work with are looking at a bit of a hybrid model, meaning some nodes will be run on Chainstack infra, some others they'll run themselves, and then some others finally they'll have run through their own accounts managed by Chainstack. So it's definitely really cool. It helps clients, again, decide what the ownership looks like, who the management is, whereabouts in the world they are, and any regions that we potentially don't support. We can open the door to that through these different integrations. We do support, what am I saying here, Azure AKS and GCP Google Cloud integration. Those are not out of the box, something a little bit more custom on the professional services side, but know that if you're an Azure shop or you're a GCP shop, we can also do that same type of integration for the hybrid hosting. So again, you would go ahead and click next. On the left side screen here, you can see my validator number 1 is up and running. It's in North Virginia. So next step would be to go down here. And again, we give about, let's say, 12 to 24 hours for these to spin up. I think we're going to get a lot quicker, and this will be point and click. But in the meantime, some stuff does have to happen on the back end. Once you click next here, you'll see that now my validator number 1 is running in my new subnet, which is awesome to see. You get a subnet name, a subnet ID, your network side, the validator number or the name, and then node ID. And then you'll see on the next slide, he'll click here and you can set copy the node ID, connect to subnet, or explore on AvaScan. So these are kind of little integration points that we're doing next. The idea would be is you then grab the node ID, the subnet ID. There's a staking component involved when it comes down to running mainnet nodes. As you know, you've got to go and place the 2K AVAX stake per validator node and then choose your term for staking. So that's something that's entirely done outside of Chainstack. We try not to get too involved with any sort of holdings, any kind of legality, insurance reasons about that. I'd love to say that we would be able to do a little bit more for the client base, but we feel so far just based on kind of risk tolerance and profile, it's easiest and best for the client to be in control of their own setup there. And so we provide the validator ID, the node ID, you go choose the stake, submit it, choose your term, and you're ready to rock. And then again, we'll talk about kind of Explore on AvaScan as well as a partner of ours. But this gives you, I think in a few minutes, the idea that somebody could come to Chainstack, not knowing 100% what they want to design, speak with one of our experts, come up with at least a plan of attack, maybe connect the dots with some of our partners or AvaLabs themselves, talk about tokenomics, virtual machine design, work with us to do something fully custom as well, and then create a subnet on the fly within a matter of probably a few clicks if you get it right. And then, just kind of up and running, right? So the idea of this taking weeks or months is gone. Low cost, low, teamwork. So you don't have to have a full DevOps team and engineering team behind you. And it's an ability to run these things very quickly and on the fly. And then the future, where I think this is going to go, is this whole idea of, validator economy, right? And I know Gogolpool's got a lot of ideas there. Some of our other clients are also doing some cool stuff there where, people will be able to cross-validate subnets, and including, I think, Landslide Network, which I was talking to Nathan about, and maybe we can, take a second to plug that in here. If somebody's running a validator on Chainstack, Nathan, technically speaking, Landslide Network could be open for business for them to validate your network and then earn rewards in that case. So would you mind spending a few seconds on that and correct me if I'm wrong on that topic?
Yeah, that's right. So it will be permissionless, probably not during testnet, but yeah, the idea is Landslide as a subnet can plug into Chainstack so that if there are validators that are hosted on Chainstack, we could offer them the ability to validate Landslide. Right. So that's sort of like an additional offering that could happen there. Eventually it'll be permissionless. Right now in testnet, it'll be permission because we just need to kind of vet who is having, who's in the validator set. But yeah, that will change.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I guess I don't know who coined the term. I heard maybe Steven from Gogolpool, or, maybe it's just a common term, but this concept that this validator economy where, running a validator, regardless if you're a corporation or a retail individual, that could be great passive income earnings. You could earn, different, native tokens for all these different subnets and validating those cross subnets. So it's pretty crazy. I don't know your thoughts on that, Nathan.
Not financial advice, not legal advice, not an advertisement of an investment contract. So there's our disclaimer. And probably we'll probably have to just move everything out of the US. But yes, that's directionally where we're heading.
I hear you. It's anyways, we'll see. Like we talked about, maybe Gensler gets canned. And anyways, I'm not a politician. I'm not a regulator. I just hope that the US can kind of get their head wrapped around this. If not, APAC is a great place to be. EU is also moving pretty quickly. So it's a small world when it comes down to this kind of connection. I'll still kind of work remotely here and call myself where I am, but really hoping the US can kind of pull through it and figure this out. But hey, I don't think that's going to stop the momentum.
I'm pretty reasonably confident we will just not right now. But keep it up, man. Keep your
absolutely.
momentum.
Okay, no, awesome. So yeah, just wanted to introduce. So obviously, Landslide would be definitely a partner of ours in the future for that. And then obviously Gogolpool. So Gogolpool, I think, was part of the group here. Folks that have met them, Breevy and Steven and the team there, awesome, very friendly, very, helpful. I think they've had a goal for the last couple of months to really meet a lot of different subnet projects, kind of understand what they can do to help. You can see here they've got a lot of coming soon type platforms, and they're there to also make subnets easy. So similar to maybe how the Chainstack UI does things, maybe Gogolpool, and I don't want to steal their thunder there, but I think there's a lot that they can do to help projects get up and running, not only from the design, the tutorials, the tooling side of things, but also from the barrier to entry. So I think a big component of what they're offering is an ability to reduce the stake requirement from, let's say, I think they said about 50% reduction out of the gates. So going from 2,000 AVAX to 1,000 AVAX, which is a pretty substantial sort of reduction. And there's a process of requiring to be staking a portion of Gogo Pool token. I won't kind of dive in too much to their platform here, but the idea is we're partnering with great players like Gogo Pool, like potential Landslide, et cetera, to try to help make this more approachable, more affordable for people, and also give people different alternatives in terms of how they want to get involved. Not using up all their stake or those kinds of things, right? So I think there's a lot of great stuff that's going to be done. Keep an eye out for Gogo Pool and obviously some of the other partners that we'll present here. So the next one in line would be Avalanche or AvaLabs, right? So I just grabbed a quick excerpt here, but the AvaLabs docs are pretty fantastic. They're not I would say somebody who's a layman like myself, not the easiest to go through and understand, but I'm at least basically able to read through. So I think they've done a good job at making it both, introductory and helpful, and also quite technical. So I would say, yeah, great plug there. They've definitely been awesome to help. They've got a lot of great things happening with Spruce and Evergreen and a lot of institutional subnets. To some extent, we're direct partners with them. And like I said, they're happy to be jumping on calls with us, help guide around tokenomics, VM design. I know there's a bit of alpha coming in terms of their bridge system with Warp messaging that I can't really speak to yet, but keep an eye out for some big changes in Avalanche in the next few months. And obviously, we're all kind of, here and excited about any new developments that they put out. I know Elastic Subnets, a few months ago, giving people the ability to use their own native utility token was amazing. That gives new utility to a token that, maybe didn't have utility in the past, right? With regards to this, using it as a gas token, as a rewards mechanism. So I think there's a lot of really cool things and an opportunity to really sort of reinvent some of the projects that have been maybe stagnant for a while. So again, lots of great support and feedback from them. And then, sorry, I don't know if you had a comment there, Nathan. Oh, no, it's just moving the slides. Got it. Okay. I would say the other great partners that we work with is AvaScan. So I know that Avalanche has their own Snowtrace Explorer. We're definitely able to provide that solution, but also a great partner of ours is called AvaScan. So they provide Subnet Explorer services for both testnet and mainnet. We're affiliate agreement partners with them directly. They provide a great level of support, very cost-effective entry point, and really clean, nice branded UI. They do a lot of white label customizations. And I think an Explorer is kind of a crucial part of the whole service. So, definitely happy to make some introductions and get their team on board, and, kind of make sure that you have an Explorer going around with your subnet as well, which is nice to see. I think we've got maybe one more. Got it. Okay. So to close off, some of the future stuff that we're going to be doing, you saw what was available through the UI. We also have API integration. So somebody could technically never touch the UI and do all of this via API, which is really cool. So nice platform API integration. If you're more on the, I guess, command line kind of API type of speed, this is something that could be very useful for that high level developer. And then also unlimited custom monitoring. So in addition to kind of AvaScan, we also have the ability to provide a lot of custom monitoring on subnets. So things like, user base, transactions, total volume, wallet addresses, all sorts of cool things that we can provide in terms of the customizations. We use custom Metabase dashboards. We use a bunch of other tools like Grafana, et cetera. We could do a lot of cool things for the client base. And again, open to ideas and, building this out to the spec that the client's after. So, API in the future, making things even quicker than through the UI, and then custom monitoring, which I think is something that's quite important for most of the people that are interested in getting this thing done. At the end of the day, that's kind of what I had for slides, Nathan. I mean, from my perspective, I am super happy to discuss with anybody that's interested in the subnets. Chainstack is one of many partners doing this. Obviously, I would say shameless plug, I think we're the best at it, but I'm just there to support the whole ecosystem as a whole and really work with some of the amazing partners, including Landslide and Nathan, who's done a great job at putting this up. So you guys can get in touch with me either via email. I should have probably plugged in my Twitter and my LinkedIn here. Telegram, same thing. I'm always known as Nick Sanchagrin. Nothing too jazzy, just, first, last name, and that's it. You can find me anywhere. I've got my mugshot up there.
Right on, man. Well, thank you for the presentation. I have a bunch of follow-up questions for you.
Solid.
So can you, maybe some of them, can you share with us some of the clients that are interested in building subnets through your service?
Yeah, now again, I don't want to kind of get myself into trouble here saying things that I shouldn't, but I can give a bit of an overview and, kind of keep things a little bit high level. But so I lead the DeFi, the wallets, the enterprise, the Web2, the Web3 segments, including GameFi and NFTs. So what we're seeing is, at least based on what I've seen, is there's a bit of a range. So you have, let's say, traditional Web2 institutions will start far left. They are currently doing things that maybe don't personally require blockchain, but they're trying to dip their toes into it. And they feel that, you know, the name sometimes blockchain is a sexy, it's an attractive thing, and it's kind of their first foray into it. But they want to have things permissioned. They want to have KYC AMLs. They want to be regulated. They want to be, you know, kind of by the book as much as they can. So this ability to have a subnet definitely opens that door, like we talked about in the beginning, Nathan, where they don't have to go to a consortium network. They can keep the tech that's being built, the liquidity, the excitement, the energy, the technology, the documentation, etc., around, let's say, subnets, by still keeping this as a permission chain and keeping their own private set of validators. So we work with like supply chain management, electric vehicle producers, all sorts of really, really cool use cases. And again, that's kind of, I don't know if you want to call it left side, but that's sort of the traditional Web 2 type folks. Now, it's not like sometimes they absolutely need the technology, but they're all asking themselves, how do I get involved with blockchain? And this is kind of that next evolution of it. We also work with traditional Forex exchange companies. So companies that have had a gigantic book of business, very, very successful, and now they're trying to kind of evolve and adapt and take on a new market. And so this is their new identity, is kind of working with providers like ourselves and developing their own subnet. Again, they would probably start on a permission type of validator set, make sure that they're not stepping outside of regulation within their businesses. And again, they do have I would say, sometimes a big book of business to protect. And so something like Spruce or Evergreen is definitely quite exciting. And they like the sound of that, the fact that this is kind of institutional focused, KYC AML, and very, very, interesting from that point of view. And then all the way on the right side, I think gaming is gigantic in the space. I still haven't seen an NFT type marketplace that's really gotten involved in subnets. I don't know if you know of any. There's a few DEXs, obviously Dexalot, Hubble Exchange, a few of the other protocols there. There's a bunch of DeFi ones, and GameFi we can get into, but I don't know if you've seen anything directly from the NFT kind of, like a Blur type or what else is there out there? There's a bunch of them.
We incubated a project called Full Stock, and that's for generative AI. So they're using, if you have they give you basically ownership of the underlying NFT that's launching in 2 or 3 days. But yeah, most of I don't think the NFT markets have listed subnets yet, but I think that's coming. I think Trader Joe will probably get there. Like Joe Pegs will probably opt for that. And I think,
and then maybe Campfire.
Blur will probably come next. Yeah.
Yeah, it's super interesting. Then I guess you ask yourself.
So you have a ton of from a ton of different sectors, really.
Yeah, and gaming I think is the big one, right? The reason why gaming is so interesting, and it feels like, actually, I'll take a pause on this. It was a super cool statistic that our PM put down the other day. They said anybody that's got a game with sub 10,000 users can be on an L1. Something that's 10 to 50,000 users needs to probably be on an L2. Anything beyond 50,000 users, based on the stats, needs to absolutely be on something like an app chain. So like I'm thinking, 50K users. I mean, obviously, not every game has that kind of user base, but some of these games have millions, maybe like billions of users, right? So it's a very, I would say, a tight race to get from an L1 to an L2 to an L3 or, to a subnet. And I think that's why a lot of games, regardless of size, as long as they think they're going to get over 50K users, it's kind of a no-brainer to start a subnet. And as different solutions and tools like ourselves, you guys building the ecosystem, the incubator side, I think there's a lot of support for them to move in this direction. And then I think BAMF, so the Elastic subnet concept, being able to reuse their native utility token. Low gas fees is a big deal. If you think of somebody in a gaming situation having to do 100 transactions within a session of an hour, the amount of gas fees somebody would burn, it wouldn't be economically stable. Also, I think DFK was doing some crazy percentage of all transactions on C-Chain, or, if I'm saying it right. And so they sort of needed to, by default, to kind of move over to a subnet. But yeah, I'll throw it back to you, Nathan, on that.
So just if you look at vaults, I did an interview with Barak, the founder. I'll just give them a shout out here so people can see where those stats are. Go to valtz.io. I'll show that here. You can see all the existing subnets. So there's 32 that are live, and DFK is still produce most of the volume. Dexalot is increasing their stake. Gunzilla, the gaming subnet, that's going to be huge. DFK, Loco Legends. That's the other gaming side.
Mhm.
Wrap Tag is for asset authentication. So yeah, it's a pretty varied ecosystem. I think what we're going to do is move the Subnet Summit to like a regular channel, because there's just so many different subnets out there, and there's not a lot of content for people to really get the, and consume the stats.
Yeah, and looking at this Vault site, that's pretty slick, and they've got this graphic that I can kind of zoom in and zoom out on, and that was,
Oh,
I
yeah.
think he's pictured the vision of this sort of, all the little dots being the validators, all the different subnets connecting, and then I saw an evolution of this, I think, which was like, let's say, a future vision of like thousands of subnets. Like the web of interconnectivity there is just insane. I can't remember who put out that picture, if it was AvaLabs or somebody, but it was just wild to see what they envision as, let's say, future in a couple of years. And I don't know if you got, yeah, so there you go. You can show the tag. So you can kind of zoom in and zoom out on it and really get a feel for, like, each of these dots is a subnet, and imagine like 10x, 20x, 100x of these things, right?
Yep.
It's crazy. And it's neat to see, you look at companies like Entain Markets. I mean, $1 trillion asset manager, KKR was another big one from the Avalanche side of things. So, different institutional investors are getting involved. I think, depending on the regulation in the States, we'll see how that goes. I think there's a lot of other players that were waiting to get involved. That being said, I work in Latin America. There's a lot of great stuff happening in Argentina and some other places in the world. So, don't sleep on it. And, as they say, builders will continue to build. But that's really cool. And I did see that, you had that interview with Vaults. And I guess, what is it that Vaults are doing here? It's not really an explorer. It's more of mapping the different subnets.
Yeah, exactly. It's a mapping feature, and then you can also see it's also sort of a risk assessment tool. You can see which validators are on, multiple chains, multiple subnets, and they're using it. They're using it just
cool.
as a basic mapping tool and a analytics tool.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, it's like, I don't even think we've cracked the surface on what can actually be built as tools and data and visibility on top of this stuff. I didn't call it out, but we do work with like layer zero, for example, for bridges. A lot of our clients are asking about, should they build their own bridge. AvaLabs sort of had their own recommendation in terms of probably not. That's a bit of a risky endeavor. I know that you guys have had to do that
one
stuff.
thing we need from Chainstack is we need to run IBC relayers. So can we spin up IBC relayers on Chainstack?
I would love to say yes, but I will have to confirm with my product team.
So that's
and
our
I
next.
think we
That's
should
the
catch
product
up.
we'll pay for. Either we have to do it
I think
ourselves,
that's
which
okay.
is possible, but it's going to take some
Sure.
time. But our one really great next product offering for you guys is IBC relayers as a service. So the way, just as a piece of background, so as Landslide connects IBC to Avalanche, there's going to be more and more IBC relayers that pop up from as IBC expands into Polkadot via composable and near via composable, and Corium is attaching IBC to XRP. There's a host of there's IBC is kind of expanding like its tentacles, and so it's an open source bridge. It's processed the most volume, and yeah, that'll be a good source of revenue for you guys.
Yeah, I'd love that. I mean, and this is, again, me being quite layman here. So usually bridges are targets of attack, right? So, I mean, it's a lot about security insurance. So what is it? Maybe, I don't know if you have an answer, and this is maybe a whole other conversation, but what is it about IBC that makes it maybe more impervious to attack? Or is it, is it based on the technologies, how it's built, or is it just equally, as potentially, attackable perhaps? And maybe that's not the right terminology here, but.
So yeah, I did an interview with Adi from the Interchain Foundation. He goes in through a lot of the technical details. I think one of the main indicators of security is just kind of time in the wild. So it's and it hasn't had any failures, and it's not been hacked. If a transaction fails, it just reverts. So I think the attack surface is pretty low. It's open source, so it's a little bit different from a closed source bridge and its security threat. So that's sort of my layman's view on IBC.
Yeah, it makes sense. And when you say the word relayer, I mean, for me, I have an idea what that means. Could you
Yeah,
explain a bit
sure.
more? I mean, relayer, yeah, please.
So let me bring up zones here. So a relayer, like it basically relays packets of information. Let me refresh this.
I'm going to zoom in as well a bit on this.
Let me try again.
Maybe my bandwidth killing you as well here, but I'm not sure.
I think it's me. Well, a relayer, while we're waiting. Oh, okay, great. It came up. Okay, so a relayer relays packets of information between two. Right now, it's between two Cosmos zones, but it'll be between any two zones. So if you check out map of zones, you can see that all of these are Cosmos zones. So like the IBC relayers are represented by the white lines here. So anything that relays information between it, that's considered a
Got it.
relayer.
Yeah, it's great. And like I said, I've just taken a screenshot. Hopefully that's able to be shared, and happy to get you in touch with our product team there, Nathan. I think there's a lot that we can do to help. And,
Sure.
to me, it's an exciting evolution. I know that, we talk about Avalanche and this and that, but I guess, from the Cosmos ecosystem, can you talk like a few minutes about what you guys have done using sort of Avalanche technology? I don't know if that's part of the conversation here. I don't want to, take away from the combo, but it'd be cool to kind of get a few minutes on what you guys have done so far.
Sure. Hold on just a second. So what we've built and released on Friday is an open source package called Landslide Core, and it's basically our version of Tendermint. So we've altered enough of the Tendermint like package to function, and sorry, I'm just getting buzzed everywhere. So I'll put a link to it right here, so people can check it out. I'll also put a link in the show notes.
Sweet.
Okay, so there we go. There's our link.
Nice.
Docs are going to come up soon, but this is basically the first step for existing Cosmos apps to examine what their outposts will look like on Avalanche. So someone like Osmosis who wants to build an outpost, they need to have some understanding of what is required of them out of the box. And we're trying to make it as seamless as possible so that they can just take their existing VM and their existing software stack and just deploy it on testnet so that they can join us. Their liquidity can kind of move over into Avalanche natively.
Wow.
So it's not that they're bridging assets via jump, wormhole, layer zero, Axelar. It's all bridged via open source like client.
Wow.
So yeah, that means that if you think about all the existing Cosmos zones, all of those can exist as zones on Avalanche as well. They just have a different validator set and a different user base. So they're expanding and less Cosmos maxis because they will become like more like a DAO. Right. So rather than be just confined to Tendermint, we're expanding their virtual machine and their users to another type of consensus, which is Avalanche, and another user base that they don't have. So
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, and that was Friday last week, pure Friday, like a
Yeah.
few days ago, technically. Wow,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
a big deal for you guys. I know you've been working on that for a while, so congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Definitely, anybody kind of listening to this, take a look at that. And obviously, exciting things to come. So, what you're saying is, not only is that picture that we had from Volts a few minutes ago, that's kind of the Avalanche ecosystem, which is going to expand, obviously, over time. But you've also got this other whole Cosmos ecosystem coming in from, a bunch of liquidity, a bunch of protocols, platforms, groups that are already built out that are going to transition over without really needing to go through kind of a bridge per se with this IBC relayer concept. So again, I think that'd be a great opportunity for Chainstack to help out from the infrastructure side.
Totally.
You hear these big bridge hacks all the time, right? And it's just, to me, sometimes maybe bridge has the wrong connotation. I guess what's the, I don't know if you can talk to it, but what's the comparison with something like a warp messaging setup with Avalanche? Is that more
It's very similar
interconnectivity
to the
between
idea,
subnets?
right? So
Okay.
it's similar to the idea. So a lot of the style of architecture you see in IBC is sort of replicated in Avalanche warp messaging. From a technical side, Avalanche warp messaging uses BLS signatures to sort of prove state transitions. But what that will mean is that the subnets will be able to communicate with other IBC zones. So you'll see different virtual machines talking to each other that would not have been able to do so otherwise. So what that means in terms of again, like to a kindergartner, you'll have a faster trading experience for like Osmo on Avalanche than you will on native osmosis, because Tendermint is a slower consensus algorithm. So you'll have a different trading experience or a different gaming experience, right?
Yeah, that's amazing. It's like, I guess, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of excitement, I guess. I don't know, you probably connected to a lot of projects that people have been kind of banging down the doors to get something like this done. Is this, a big pipeline of opportunities behind it, or are you still just kind of generating some buzz around it?
Yeah. So there's a ton of protocols we're in touch with. If you are listening to this and you are in Cosmos or Polkadot and you want to, move over to Avalanche without a lot of trouble, please reach out to us. We're totally down to help. There will be some, we're in an incentivized testnet now. So the program will kind of roll itself out soon, but enough of our code is out there that once people start playing around with it and reporting bugs, there'll be bug bounties as well.
Nice. Yeah, that's brilliant. I mean, and you think of the vision, I guess, if somebody said to you, where do you think things are going to be in a year? I guess that's probably kind of a hard question to answer, crystal ball side, right? But
if you take a look at BTCB, right, Bitcoin, which stands for basically bridged Bitcoin in Avalanche, you'll see that Avalanche processes more Bitcoin than native Lightning Network.
Crazy.
Right. So that's a really interesting stat. And that's kind of where we think things are going to head, is that when there's a finality differential between Avalanche and Cosmos, or Avalanche and another chain, the chains will sort of move their assets into the place where it's faster. And so that's kind of where we imagine things in a year from now.
And what about somebody trying to take advantage of all this movement? Like arbitrage maybe comes to mind.
Oh, totally. So we're looking at integrating with Skip protocol, which takes a lot of those MEV trades and pushes them to the token holders. There's also, like dark, basically an opportunity for like if you look at Enclave Markets, which is basically like a dark pool, like they have a lot of their execution in a secure execution environment. So that's another place to integrate to prevent that type of MEV front running. So yeah, but yeah, obviously the arbitrages will happen, and that's kind of what we're banking on. Yeah.
And that kind of forces the hand of people to kind of shift more towards the right, I guess, and pick their, that's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, amazing. Yeah. And so what would be, I guess, trying to think of what would be one of I'm trying to think here. What's a really exciting project, I guess you could say, that you think is going to make that transition pretty quickly? I don't know if you can share either just the type instead of the name, but what's kind of one to look out for?
Osmosis has expressed interest. Juno's expressed interest. Juno sees itself as a DAO. So, and we want to make sure that, everyone, that each stack and group has its own sovereign rule sets and governance rules. So, we're not forcing anyone to move over. We're happy to help, facilitate whatever people would like to do. But they're going to be the ones in charge of their own sovereign stack. So we're happy to explore other options in the near term, but there's some big Cosmos chains that will be involved.
Yeah, and I guess how does somebody get in touch with Mr. Nathan here? I guess did they go through your Twitter, Discord, Telegram?
Yeah, just DM us on Twitter at Cosmos AVAX. I'll throw it.
Nice.
Thank you for the reverse interview, sir.
No, we can jump back to some questions. It's always a pleasure to speak with you, Nathan. I mean, you've impressed me from day one, just kind of, your openness, your candidacy. I think this is awesome what you're doing. This is, I think, unsponsored, not maybe unsanctioned is the wrong word, but this is something out of the kindness of your heart and the volition that you're trying to do for the community. So it means a lot. So anybody listening, Nathan is a wicked resource. He's got a lot on the go. Definitely very intelligent, happy to jump in on spaces. I've seen you do so many different sessions with other folks. So glad to see the plug there too.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I mean, any other questions on our side? Like I said, I'm trying to think. We covered a lot of it.
Yes, that's right. Just as a point of but hitting back your other one, we didn't take any sponsorship money. We didn't charge any fee for the tickets. This was done mostly to pump the mainnet summit, which is Avalanche in Barcelona next month in May. And this was just an opportunity for people who couldn't make it or whatever to show up and get involved with Subnets. But yeah, we didn't take any sponsorship money. None of this is paid advertising. So
somebody throw them a bone.
The bone is Chainstack exists and Landslide exists, and we hope that the twain shall meet. My closing thoughts on this is I'd like to see Subnets as a service in Chainstack kind of developed into like a white glove service, I think, for corporations, right? So like in our BD, like we talk to TradFi people who just can't get their head around it, and they can't they don't have the time to, and they don't really get it. But so it's a long sort of sales cycle. And if Chainstack can offer, partnership with custodians for the key management and, geofencing for validator compliance and reporting tools, I think that's the best services an infrastructure provider can offer.
It's a great summary. And I mean, you touched on two other things just to close off. We have a minute. So custody, right? So I mean, I'm quite familiar with the custody space. There's obviously a lot of kind of motion from the Geminis, the Coppers, the BitGos, the Fireblocks, those kinds of things. So, MPC versus multi-sig. Also, just wanted to plug in, we work with a great partner called OpenCover. They're trying to think of, and I was on the phone with them the other day. So OpenCover does sort of DeFi insurance based on Nexus Mutual as their, I don't know if you can call them the underwriter, but obviously I think also to help promote and provide security and insurance, having those kinds of covers available would be very cool in the future. And then custody is, I agree with you, if you're holding, let's say 10K AVAX, it's a fair bit of money to be playing around with, dealing with your own stake. I think a lot of the problems there too is like institutions may not even be able to hold the AVAX. So that was definitely a bit of a barrier to entry to some of the other folks, is can they within their own jurisdictions hold, buy, and then do they want to hold an asset that also is a bit volatile? So, there's that kind of, maybe not a stigma, but that's a bit of a barrier that people have to kind of adapt and evolve to, is the fact that, a portion of your stake is there. Yeah, thanks for putting up opencover.com. That's great. Gelt Finance is the backing, and then OpenCover is the cover platform. And they're launching, I think they just launched, again, doing a lot of cool stuff. And I just had a chat with the gentleman there about subnets. And he was like, wow, we're trying to get our heads wrapped around it. I think the problem with cover is for the retail user, it's what is that right dollar figure? And I think some people got themselves into trouble where they were sort of paying out more on the cover based on the rough market conditions that we had last, year or two, where, everybody's kind of losing a lot of money. And so, insurance there is hard to find the right target. And then building obviously enough of a I don't know what you call it, like a pool, I guess, to be able to pay out these covers. But yeah, so like I think personally, just from an extended point of view, is insurance, custody, bridges, either whether it's native to Avalanche or something external. I think connecting the two ecosystems from the Cosmos side of things to the Avalanche side of things is really interesting. And like you mentioned, just kind of making this simple, effective, easy. As you pointed out, TradFi companies, I imagine the way that it goes is, if they're large enough and exciting enough, they would go sort of directly to AvaLabs, which is fantastic. They're definitely leading the pack and helping us sort of smaller folks kind of, develop and build these things out. But there's thousands and thousands of use cases out there that could be used and successfully done via Subnet. For example, I was speaking to somebody in Mexico, a company called BlockPay.mx or BlockPay.avax. I can't remember how they brand themselves these days, but they do point of sale devices, and that's their bread and butter. That's their business. They do a really good job at them, very high tech to be able to help merchants in Mexico. But as well, they're going to store that data on a subnet as their kind of secured, decentralized backup. So use cases that don't have to do with gaming, don't have to do with sort of, DeFi and those kinds of things, just really being used as a secure backup. And it's their first foot through the door into kind of the blockchain ecosystem. So I agree with you. Documentation, tutorials, guides, services around this, partnerships. I think people working together as opposed to kind of, fighting against each other for the market conditions or for the market share is a really cool way to do it. And, again, I think development, right? So smart people like yourself, Nathan, behind the scenes, working to connect the dots, build these types of IBC type relay or bridges. And then, hopefully, product vision on our side as well kind of connects. So yeah, that's my take on it. It's super exciting stuff to be involved with. Again, appreciate the opportunity here. You've been awesome. Always a great host. And really excited to see, are you attending the AVAX Summit yourself in Barcelona?
I'm not, but some of our team is.
Yeah, totally. Likewise. I'm also, I'm an expensive traveler from the East Coast of Canada, and I've got a young one at home. So I'm probably going to be taking a pass on this one. It's a shame. I think it'd be a lot of fun, and I'm sure you'd be very well received down there, Nathan, but I imagine next time, and that's why you're doing this one.
All right, Nick, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate your help.
Likewise. Thanks, Nathan. See ya.